Hi, and welcome to another episode of FPL Fanzone. My name's Nick, and in this episode we're going to look at some early game fixture analysis and how that will impact your strategy as you look to start the season. If you like this video, please don't forget to click like and subscribe. So let's get on with it. So what is FDR? And no, I'm not talking about the 32nd President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt. I'm talking about the Fixture Difficulty rating provided on the Fantasy Premier League website, which gives each game week and each fixture a difficulty rating between 1 and 5, allowing you to target the teams that have the easiest fixtures for that game week. So what we have here is the first 7 game weeks of the new season, looking at it from the FPL fixture ticker. And as you look here, there's a sea of colour and it's very difficult to identify which teams have the best starts. So I've made that a little bit easier by tallying up the scores. And what you can see when you actually look at the numbers is that Liverpool have a significantly easier start over the first 7 game weeks than the likes of Wolves, Brighton or Brentford. But also you could target teams like Chelsea, Aston Villa and Everton and Nottingham Forest, who all have a really good start to the season. But what does that mean for your team? With the Premier League starting in just under 2 weeks at time of recording, now's the time to start planning your team and your early game week strategy. So what does that look like for you? And I guess that depends a lot on your type of character and how you like to play the game. Do you want to be ultra aggressive? Do you want to attack the early fixtures? Are you more of a patient player, a bit of a thinker? Or are you just more casual, relaxed, reactive, picking players that you like? Each of those come with their own different strategies, and here are some that I found across YouTube and looking on X. So if you're ultra aggressive, I've seen people talk about doing a bench boost game week 1 and a wild card on game week 2. Now this is ultra aggressive as you're using 2 of your chips within the first 2 game weeks. Not my style of play, but we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. If you'd want to attack the early fixtures, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about a wild card in game week 4. So you're really going to be looking at just setting up your team for game weeks 1 to 3. If you're a bit more of a patient player, taking into consideration the new allowing up to 5 transfers to roll, you can maybe wait for the first 5 game weeks, build up and bank those transfers and give you options later on in the game. Or the last one, of course, you can just be a little bit more set your team up, set and forget, get your consistent players for those first 6-7 weeks before you start looking at using your wild card and just reacting on a week by week basis with your free transfer. So what does that mean from a data perspective? And if you look at the fixture ticker, for example, if you're being ultra aggressive, you're really going to need to do this twice. One, just watch your game week 1 strategy, looking at getting the best out of that bench boost and using those 4 additional players before you wildcard and look at a longer term 2 to 7 game weeks on that as well. If you just want to attack the early fixtures and look at a game week 4 wildcard, then really you need to start looking at the fixtures between game weeks 1 and game weeks 3, and you'll see when we go through to the next slide how that actually impacts which types of teams that you should be targeting. And then the same again for the patient thinker. You spread those fixtures a little bit further over the first 5 game weeks, and then we'll look at game weeks 1 to 7 for that more casual player who's maybe not looking to make a set of plan in place straight from the start. So here I'm using the Fantasy Football Hub's Fixture Analyzer. Now this is an external site that gives you much more in-depth detailed options to choose and filter through when you're looking at fixture analytics. And first off, you'll see here in that same game week 1 to 7 period, you'll see that it's got Aston Villa and Arsenal top of the ticker and Liverpool down in 3rd. So automatically giving you different set of results from what's on the FPL website. You can also filter this to look at easiest attacking fixtures, easiest defence fixtures, as well as points, goals scored and clean sheets. It's giving you a real in-depth analysis on different metrics that you want to choose on how you want to pick your players and the teams that you should be targeting. But let's have a quick look at the different strategies that we were talking about in the last slide. So first and foremost, if we were going ultra aggressive and looking at a bench boost in game week 1, you're really going to be looking at targeting Newcastle, Arsenal, Everton as overall picks. And then obviously you've got the likes of Nottingham Forest, Manchester United, Brentford, even Leicester and West Ham as good picks for game week 1. And there, if you break that down into the types of attackers that you want, you can see that Newcastle, Arsenal, Leicester are going to be the types of teams that you want in your attack. And in your defence, again, you're looking at Everton, Newcastle, Arsenal are high on this list again, and then the likes of Nottingham Forest, Liverpool are still in that good to have. Now, when you look at that again for the next one, when you're attacking maybe a game week 4 wild card, that list's changed again. And you can see here that overall, if you're looking game weeks 1 to 3, maybe you want to be targeting Nottingham Forest as the best team there. You've also still got Arsenal, Newcastle and Everton in there. Again, if you look at the attacks, you can see Forest, Newcastle, Brentford, Leicester in the first 3 game weeks. And then the same with defence, Nottingham Forest, Everton, Newcastle, really standing out as quite high in there as well. If we spread that to game week 5, if you're looking, just to bank those transfers and get up a good start for the first 5 game weeks, then you may be looking at Fulham, Southampton, Crystal Palace as more steady players to have. You can see Liverpool, Leicester, Man City are all sort of in those teams that you should be having from an attacking perspective. But from a defensive perspective, again, Liverpool top of this list, Aston Villa, Brighton, Fulham. So depending on the range that you're looking at, you're seeing a different set of names of teams that you should be going after. And then, of course, as we come back to that original there, if you're looking at that more casual play, you want to set up your team for the first 7 game weeks, then you want to be targeting Villa, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, Brighton, for example, as teams to have as staples in there and have some maybe outsider or low-owned picks that you can use to change depending on what happens in the start of the season. The other thing to note when looking at creating staples in your team, players that you're not going to look to change out that are fixture proof. One thing you notice when you look at this analyzer, whether it's game week 1 range, 3 game week range, whether it's a 5 game week range, or whether it's a 7 game week range, you'll notice that whether it's goals scored or clean sheets, that Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool are top of the ticker on each of those ranges for both goals scored and clean sheets. So you want to be considering that when you're creating your staples for your team to make sure that you're not having to make regular transfers for players from that team. So coming back to those earlier strategies that we discussed, based on the fixture ticker and fixture analysis, if you're looking at ultra aggressive in game week 1 outside of your staples of Manchester City, Liverpool and Arsenal, in your defence you should be targeting teams like Newcastle, Everton, Manchester United, and in your attack Newcastle, Leicester and Nottingham Forest. If you're looking for maybe a wild card game week 4, you want to attack those early fixtures, then in those game weeks 1 to 3, in your defence you should be looking at Forest, Everton, Newcastle, Fulham, and in your attack again Forest, Newcastle or Brentford outside of your staples. For the more patient player, someone who's planning for those first 5 game weeks, whether to roll transfers or just to be reactive on that, teams outside of your top teams of Villa, Brighton and Fulham for your defence, Fulham, Southampton or Crystal Palace in your attack to give you better results, chance of easier fixtures over those next 5 game weeks. And then lastly, if you're looking at a longer term staples, so maybe you're not looking to change too many players at all outside of your staples, you can also look at defences from Aston Villa, Chelsea, Brighton, and then Palace, Everton and Brighton in your attack. So hopefully that's just given you some ideas for you to choose which teams to target your players from depending on your early game strategy. Lastly, something to consider here when picking teams to target and pick which players you want. There's been an unprecedented shift in managers moving into the Premier League over the pre-season. And you can see 5 of them here. Chelsea with Maresca, Leicester with Steve Cooper, Liverpool with Arne Slot, West Ham with Julen Lopetegui, and Brighton and Hove Albion coming in with Hertzler, all coming in. Each of these teams are going to want to bring their own style to their new teams, but also got to take into consideration that there was the Euros and the Copa America going, so they won't even have had the whole pre-season to be working with some of their best players who have been away on international duty. So just take that into consideration when you're looking at players coming into the new season that have new managers. Have they had time to bed in or to learn the new systems? So just take that into consideration when you're making your choices. Thank you for watching FPL Fanzone. And if you've made it this far into the video, please don't forget to click like, subscribe, and hit that notification button to give you updates on when the next videos are coming. Speak to you soon.